Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Happiness Journey with Dr. Dan podcast, where every journey is worth living. My name is Dr. Dan, and I'm your host for today's episode. I'm a bilingual cognitive behavior psychotherapist specializing in anger management issues, both court-appointed and private, marriage counseling using the EFT method, dissociative disorders, narcissistic personality disorders, depression, anxiety, dream analysis, and also provide life, business, and retirement coaching support. I provide individual one-on-one sessions in both French or English, and also do group settings. If you need any assistance, reach out to DMB therapy and coaching services at 301-325-1550, and our website can be found at lifecoachddanamzallag.com. Today, I'm very excited to have for our sixth episode of season 12, a very special guest and life coach, Morgan Beard. And just like every of my past episode, I will leave it up to the guests to properly introduce themselves, as no one can do a better job. Morgan, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dan. It's such a pleasure to be here. I love getting to talk about my experiences in the hopes that it'll resonate with someone and it'll help them along their journey. So for me, on a personal level, I started to experience depression when I was 13, definitely anxiety as well. And as I kind of discussed with you a little bit earlier, a big part of that wound that was kind of festering underneath that and ended up manifesting as depression was not being acknowledged, even sort of being ignored or rejected for my authentic impulse to sing and to make music and to perform. And this was something that was kind of shut down in my home life. And so I buried it for most of my life. I'm 32 years old now, and I'm only just kind of in the last few years really been able to unearth that stuff and reach this state of self-expression in a way that really fits who I am at my core. And so to get to where I am now professionally and personally, basically I studied to be an art therapist. I got my master's in art therapy, which is psychotherapy plus the visual art process. And that was an amazing skill set to gain and taught me a lot about emotions, nonverbal communication, working with people, helping them meet their goals. And then in my first year out of grad school, working at my first job at a nursing home, I burnt out and went right back into a depressive episode and was having the most intense suicidal ideation that I had ever had. And I was like, well, crap. I thought that I had this all figured out and I was going to be, this person doing this, and I was done. I figured it out. I mastered it. So I had to change every single thing about my life in order to take a shot at happiness. So I moved to Los Angeles purely for the weather and the cultural emphasis on like a holistic sort of balanced life, and kind of pieced together some part-time work, which ended up being that I worked for a life coach, or a business coach rather, and saw how she ran her business and the female entrepreneurs that she worked with. And then that kind of was like this big aha of like, oh, I could translate the skills that I've gained, learning how to help myself, learning how to help others, and doing it in a creative way to form my own life coaching business. So I did that. And then through that realized, oh, I'm not advocating for this little part of me that wants to make music. So going back to the beginning on that, and 3 or 4 years later, here I am having released my first music project, and I'm really isolating now how I'm using my skills as a healer and a coach and combining them with music, performance, singing. And I have this holistically radiant sort of way of being now and it's taken my whole life really to put together. And I'm sure there are pieces that I still haven't uncovered because, we're all always evolving, but that's where I am at this exact moment in time.
Wow, thank you very much for sharing this, Morgan. So when it comes to the different part of your life from 13 years old till 32, and after you finished your degree, your master degree in therapy and art therapy, did you feel that that was not your calling? Did you feel that there was something missing, that you spent all this time and all this money to be able to get that degree, but yet, wow, this is not what I'm meant to be?
Not at first. I was so convinced. I was like, I finally found this right. I was always kind of shuffling, like, I want to use my creativity and I want to help people in different ways and combining those in different ways. And I thought that art therapy was going to be the thing I was doing for the rest of my life. It wasn't until I was struggling a few months into my first job out of grad school. I was trying to, get my hours together for licensure, but I was going into work and it got to the point where it was like, I can't even work with my clients without having to choke back my own sadness. And I had never quit anything in my life, like leading up till that point. I thought that success was just grinding through it, even though it didn't matter how miserable I was. And so obviously in retrospect, not a great philosophy. But at that point, I really thought, oh my God, I'm failing at this thing that I'm meant to be doing. But it was obviously a sign that that was not what I was meant to be doing.
So when you went to go work for that life coach, did you feel that that may have been a better calling for you? That this may have been something that, because I mean, come to think of it, there's this very, very I mean, there's a big difference between obviously therapist and life coaching or mental
Mm-hmm.
health coaching, but at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, there's a very thin line that crosses that barrier between both, where you have to sometimes wear the hat of a coach and sometimes wear the hat of a therapist. Are you like in that between line, or how does that work?
Yeah, I would say I'm in that between line and then some. I'm like, it's like Bed Bath and Beyond because even recently so I mean, really to answer your question, like, no, I didn't go into that job thinking I was going to be a life coach. At that point, I was just like piecing together part-time work. I was also an SAT tutor and there was some third thing that clearly was really important to me, but I
How
was
did you
just trying to make it work.
know?
um, but yeah, you kind of end up, I think, a lot of times like stumbling into things that you don't realize. Oh, this is a really meaningful stone on my path. But yeah, even in the last month, I've uncovered a huge new facet of what I do for people, which is I'm starting to move into energy work and body work. And I had the opportunity to discover that that stuff was just sort of in me. I had never trained for that. And so now I'm kind of going, oh, I have this other arsenal that I never thought about or prepared for. And well, at this rate, I imagine I'll be continuing to discover things like that because it's like when you put yourself in a situation where things can get brought out of you, you can really be surprised at what's built into you. I'm a past lives person, so I think, I think it's something that's beyond Morgan Beard in this lifetime. I think it's something that's sort of just in my tissues from lifetimes of experiences.
Now, we're not going to
Um,
go much deeper into the reincarnation part, but do you think that you are
yeah.
an old soul?
Oh yes, always known that. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So
Yeah, I was
deja vu moment, something, or
sorry.
are there any deja vu moments that you've experienced?
Um, so I've done several past life regressions with different professionals that do that, and I do believe that I've had experiences in my body that feel as if they have come not from me. Different levels of clarity and sort of tangibility to them, but some of the more meaningful ones, it really felt like, okay, I'm feeling something in my body and I'm now trying to decode what is this really intense experience I'm going through and working with that person to put the pieces together. And then after feeling it in my body, it has cleared things up in my life. So to me, it's kind of like I used to be a skeptic, but then after having some of these experiences, it's like, actually, that's the most plausible explanation.
Yes. So for our listeners out there, Morgan, especially those
Yeah.
who are struggling in their career,
Yeah.
they either like we have a lot of like, different people like who are a different career. They wonder if this is really their calling, if this is something
Mhm.
that they should continue, or maybe try to do something different that will probably help them be happier because right now they are really sad or depressed or whatever else. So
Yeah.
what kind of what would you suggest them to be able to kind of like open up their um the realm of what they think they would have never done, okay, or never considered in their lives, but yet because they were so enthralled about the success of being either a lawyer or a dentist, an architect or whatever it is, but yet they forget about what really makes them happy. So how
Yeah.
allow them to be able to open up and to say, you know what, I was so close-minded for many years, let me try to be open-minded.
Yeah. Well, as someone who desperately ignored their own body and emotions for years and years and years, even when I was so sure, like I said, that I was doing the right thing, I think the biggest recommendation I have is to pause and listen to your body and be willing to look at your emotions, look at those signals that you're getting from inside of yourself. Like, I don't have a map to give you to say, oh, yeah, obviously you shouldn't be a lawyer. You should be a whatever. Um, it's getting into dialogue with your own body and being sort of brave enough to hear what it's telling you. When I was working in that nursing home, I was going against myself every minute of every day in pursuit of this tangible goal of trying to get my license so I could be an art therapist, because surely that's what I meant to do, obviously. Um, but I mean, my body was filled with dread approaching that building every single day. And on the commute, it was like an hour commute every day, there and then back. And it was just weighing me down, and I was crying so much. And I I don't have a great relationship with my mom. I was calling her twice a day to cry about how bad this job was. Like, that was a big sign. And I was so rigidly attached to the outcome I thought I was supposed to be going for, that I was just suppressing and pushing down and trying to grind through what my body was telling me, which was obviously this is not working. Um, and it can be much subtler signals than that. So, what I would say is try to give yourself some time and some space to inquire within yourself. How is this really feeling for me? What do I feel like when I go to work? What do I feel like when I think about what I'm doing, how I'm contributing to the world, whose agenda I'm serving? Um, but a lot of times we don't even want to open that door because there's that part of us that is afraid that those answers are, it's a big fat no. So if you're feeling that sense of trepidation, that sense of there's dread right behind the door, I would start really, really compassionately and kindly and lovingly, and maybe open up with a trusted friend, family member, someone who you know is going to be on your team, um, and start to dialogue with them. And then maybe start to notice, well, what am I actually saying about this? What am I actually feeling about this? And paying attention to what's going on in your gut. I mean, that seems like an obvious thing, but we know, go with your gut, blah, blah, blah. But we did a lot of times
Obviously.
we're not really with it. We're not really listening. So I would say really listen to your chest. That's where we store a lot of emotions like anxiety. We can feel a lot of like tension there. We stop breathing. In our stomach, we hold a lot of our depression, our anxiety. So listen to those parts of us and get so, so, so quiet that the answers arise from within us rather than we think them down.
Mhm. Now,
Yeah.
you mentioned that you stumbled upon a few of the different tasks or different jobs that you've had. Now, when it comes to those who have to change completely their career, they can't just stumble into something. They really have to kind of like figure out a plan, figure out a strategy. Now, I know that sometimes you can stumble upon something that's going to change your perspective about life, etc. But when you have people who have family that have to bring food to the table, so they're like stuck right like in a vortex of not sure how they're going to bring themselves to be happy because they're stuck in a job that brings them the lifestyle that they live in right now. But yet at the same time, if they, when they go home after a whole week of stress and they hate their job, they're so scared about Sunday night because Monday they have to repeat this all over again. How can you find the right middle? How can you just be able to let go of this weight on your shoulder, but then at the same time still find happiness and be able to survive and your family survive?
The first thing to say is like, that is tough. That's a really tough one. Like, I think accepting the full reality of how difficult, how heavy that is, how intense it feels to have that pressure on you to provide for everyone around you, all of that responsibility. Yeah. So going back to my sort of like body formula, the first step is just feeling where you are and seeing if you can find the sadness, the anger in having to accept that this is your situation right now, and being really honest with yourself, crying, hitting pillows, doing the things that really flow naturally out of discovering that you have those emotions. Then once you're a slightly clearer channel, because you've been more honest with yourself about the emotions that you're having and the reality that it is tough. Like, I'm not going to tell you, oh, it's not tough, it's so easy, like what the hell are you doing? No. Then once you're a clearer channel, then you have a little more space to notice as you go about your day, what are the little things maybe at first that just start to kind of spark a bit of delight or joy. Or maybe you hear a coworker talking about something that you're kind of like, that's interesting to me for some reason. And it's just about kind of following those little threads. The signs and the opportunities and the possibilities can be there if you have enough space to be looking for them. I mean, my method was give up everything and start from scratch and take a huge leap of faith. And then I had so much space that all the right things could just rush right in. Mm-hmm. But if your life is already so full with all of these responsibilities, you have less room for those little moments of flow and spark and delight to come in. So I would say, see if you can create a little bit more space, some moments to yourself where you can really be honest about your emotions and kind of let them run their course a little bit. And then set the intention to notice what sparks delight for me when I look around my life, as I move through my life. You don't have to work so hard. It's more about letting things that are interesting to you come in and kind of chasing those little threads down. And you might, in order to do that, you might have to kind of quiet or at least put on hold that voice in your head that says, well, this is stupid. If you have a little voice in your head telling you that something is stupid and you're not worth doing it or whatever, do that thing. That's a good sign.
I agree 100% on that one. But when it comes to your own now personal journey, Morgan, do you feel that sometimes you remember or you have triggers that brings you back to being depressed at times? Or do you feel that throughout your journey up until now, you were able to cope with or come up with a coping mechanism that allows you to not bring back those old memories?
I'm actually in a really interesting phase right now. Since the end of college, so I've been in and out of therapy since the end of high school, and been on and off antidepressants since the end of college. And I recently got off of them about 3 months ago in April in preparation for an ayahuasca retreat. And I feel the most optimistic that I have ever felt, that on a day-to-day level, wow, I am really content. I am managing this better than I ever have. And what I'm experiencing is moments of sadness. I'm experiencing the emotion of sadness, right? I'm experiencing the emotion of grief. but I'm not yet experiencing long periods of depression, of self-questioning, of identifying myself as someone who is stuck in this. And that's something that is relatively new for me because I reached stability with medication, on and off different phases. And, but I was still identifying as someone who was depressed. I still felt, well, that's sort of my default, this lower emotional baseline. And I'm starting to find that my baseline has moved. And that's a little scary for me because, I don't want to get attached to now I'm this happy person and then someday depression comes back. But at the moment, I'm experiencing life as it comes. I'm experiencing these emotions as they come. Like I said before, I've cleared my channel. So I'm not trapped in sadness. I experience sadness, but I know what it feels like when it bubbles up. I feel the tears coming. I acknowledge, oh, this is a really sad thought. I allow myself to cry. I allow myself to move my body, to journal about it, whatever. I keep that channel clear and I don't trap myself in that emotion, which is not to say that someone, because when I identified as someone with depression, no one could tell me that, oh, this is just like something that I've decided that I have because I was in it. Like there was no escaping it for me for years. But gradually over time, it's like you clear your channel, you address the parts of you that are stuck in that wound, and you work with them, you bring them to light, and you move through them and you move with them. You don't go, I'm severing this part of me off and away, and now I've healed it and it's gone, goodbye, fuck you. It's not like that.
It's never like that, unfortunately. But do you feel like a lot of people like ask me the same question when it comes to sustainability of happiness?
Mm-hmm.
As we know, it is non-sustainable. You cannot be happy all the time because it's like an EKG; it goes up and down.
Yeah.
But do you feel that when you get into your moment of happiness, do you try your best to prolong it, or do you accept the sadness to come in bouts, and then you basically do not let it linger in for too long, and then you just basically release it to the universe?
I try to be as accepting of every single emotion that comes into my awareness. Um, when it's a good one, I might kind of savor it as it comes, but I'm trying not to grab onto it. But I do plant seeds for myself in the present that will manifest in the future to create circumstances that I think will bring me happiness, like making a plan to see a friend, um, going to this community event. Like I sow those seeds in the past so that the future self feels cared for, their needs feel met. But then, when things come up, sometimes, oh, I don't really feel like doing that thing that I planned to do. So instead of staying attached to, no, you have to do it because we planted this seed and we're going to be happy. It's like, that is the anti.
Antichrist.
Yeah, you have to be honest with yourself in the moment that you are and be real with what's going on. It's that sort of self-denial attitude, whether it's I should be happier, I shouldn't be sad. Oh my God, that so much pressure to put on ourselves. I find it's much easier that if, oh, you know what, I'm sadder than I expected to be in this moment, I shift my mindset around that's okay. And so now what can we do? Let's shift the plan so that the living, breathing human animal that I am can feel that they're consistently in this container of a nurturing self, a self that's with them, that's not abandoned when circumstances change. I think that's the more important thing than sticking really dogmatically to a plan.
Absolutely. Now, do you feel that now, especially after this pandemic, Morgan, where most of not just the US, but the world population were put in isolation, it allowed people to be able to realize a lot of things about themselves that they never had the chance to know because they were so busy with so many things about life, about obligation of work, family, friends, and so on and so forth. But now, do you know that? I mean, do you think that because of this isolation enabled people to kind of like press the brake a little bit, kind of slow down and start realizing what is really important to them?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I certainly count myself among that population and feel like one of the tremendously lucky ones where what I do actually was able to be amplified by everyone shutting down. You probably
Absolutely.
experienced this as well,
Mhm.
um, because I've I've had my mental health has been something that has forcibly pushed the brakes in my life many, many times. So I've had to do this like reevaluation, self-consideration, what are we doing here moment. I've had that moment with myself a lot of times in my life. And so that's allowed me to make those pivots that have put me in a seat now um, that I feel really good about. And so it was sort of um, sickly pleasing to observe other people doing this that I have been forced to confront this for my whole life. And it's, okay. Other people are having to have this moment, this touch point with themselves that they didn't have to have when they were able to flood their life with busyness, activity, things that they could just do kind of on autopilot. And so obviously the pandemic was this major collective trauma that we're still experiencing, and has wreaked havoc on people's health and, livelihoods, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But that big pause is so essential. And I don't think we need a pandemic
Yeah, I know.
to
Okay.
or we shouldn't, at least, for people to have that moment with themselves and to start to notice what's going on in my body, what's going on in my life. Do I need more community? Do I need more authentic interaction? Do I need to realign my life with my actual passions and values?
So for our listeners, Morgan, how can people find you?
Yeah, the best way to find me is to go to my website, which is morganbeard.coach, MORGAN beard. I was like, wait a minute. Whoa. MORGANBEARD.coach.
And on Instagram or Facebook, do you have like any social media links?
Yeah. So I'm sort of like pivoting because I've now have this dual identity as like who I am and the coach, and then who I am and the singer. So for social media, it's I am Money, IAMMUUNIE.
Beautiful. Well, we're going to have all your social media links on the description of the podcast. So at least people will be able to click and find you there. And on that note, Morgan, that is all the time that we have for today's podcast. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your very busy schedule to join us. And thank you again for participating and inspiring our many listeners with your incredible story. Now, we hope that you've all enjoyed today's episode. And I'm also very excited about the many upcoming guests that we have scheduled for season 12 of the Happiness Journey podcast, filled with inspirational stories just like the one that you listened to today. Now, here are some concluding words of wisdom. We tend to forget that happiness doesn't come as a result of getting something we don't have, but rather of recognizing and appreciating what we do have. Learn to enjoy every minute of your life. Be happy now. Be mindful. Don't wait for something outside of yourself to make you happy in the future, as the future is never guaranteed. Happiness is a place between too much and too little of something or someone. Finally, the three grand essentials to happiness in this life are something to do, something to love, and something to hope for. Once it's all met, happiness is achieved. My name is Dr. Dan Amzallag, and you may all keep pursuing your amazing journey in life.